Hello, everybody, and welcome to this brand new episode of A Conversation with Cometan. We're now on season 3, episode 9. So we're getting through this season quite quickly now. I think I only started filming maybe about a month or so ago. So we're getting through quite a few episodes. I've got a lot of interesting topics to discuss. Especially in today's episode, because we've got a recurring guest, Giulio Prisco, who I've had multiple conversations with over the last couple of years now. And it's just good to, I think, check in every so often. And, you know, you don't need to talk every week, but it's good to keep the ideas flowing and keep up to date with what people are thinking about, and that's important. So thanks, Giulio. I'll let you say a few words and then we can get started on the topic today, which is cosmic eschatology, and I want to look at also this idea of sort of resurrection and the cosmic resurrection, which is sometimes how I phrase it, which are you could say maybe one of the doctrines, maybe that word isn't the right word, but one of the doctrines of cosmism. So that's the main topic for today. But before we get into that, how are you and Giulio, and what have you been kind of thinking about recently since I last spoke? What's the main things been on your mind?
Thank you very much for having me. And first, remind me, when was the last time we spoke? I think about in 2020, I believe.
No, it was early. No, because it was the Terrasem in July. Terrasem closed.
Yes, but that's what
Yes.
was a workshop. I mean, the time before.
Directly, I think it was February. I think maybe or very early on in this year, 2021.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So after that conversation, what have I done? I have written a book about spaceflight, titled "Futurist Spaceflight Meditations." Is basically a very short book about everything that is happening in spaceflight and everything that will happen in both the next few years, the next few decades, the next very many centuries, and all the future, is not apparently very much related to the ideas of cosmism and cosmic eschatology that we're going to discuss, but only apparently, because to me, it is very much related. Why? Because, we have a very bright cosmic future ahead. Just listen to the previous episode with me to hear more, or listen to the rest of this one. But all the little things that we are doing now, all the baby steps that we are taking to expand humanity beyond the Earth and to develop all necessary enabling science and technology for that, are steps that we, I think, are taking directly in preparation for this very bright cosmic future in which we will fill the universe and become like God and develop godlike capabilities, like resurrecting the dead from the past. So I do see every space launch as a kind of a powerful ritual that remind us of all that is going to come. That's going to be a wonderful thing.
Yes, and I agree, and I think even just some of the smaller things, every event that we do, or every idea that is shared with someone else, I think even down to that even smaller level is even more of a, because I think that there is two kind of endeavors that are taking place. There's sort of the physical sort of exploration of space, which is what you've just referred to, but then there's this other side that we're both involved with, which is the sort of the trying to change people's mentalities and trying to kind of explore space philosophically and theologically, and there's two things going on here. There's two kinds of exploration.
Yes. We could call them perhaps the interpenetration of inner space and outer space.
Yes, yes. And I'm more involved with the intellectual side, but these two things, of course, interact with one another. And for me, especially, space exploration is dependent. My ideas are dependent on space exploration, the physical exploration coming true. Mm-hmm. So they are very much intertwined. But I just wanted to pick up on one thing that you've referred to so far, which was that we have a positive future in space, that things are, despite the way the world might be right now, or sometimes I can feel a bit down about things. I think overall, it's nice to hear that you say, we do have a positive future. It is positive. It's not something to be negative about. And I like that. So just expand on what you mean by that positive future in space. What do you mean by that?
Well, the fact that we all feel a little bit down sometimes is not anything new.
Yeah.
I believe it has been the human condition for as long as history goes. I'm sure my grandfather felt very much down many times, and his grandfather, and of course I do too. Yes. Because things change, things wiggle and go. Some day you hear something good, another day you hear something bad. And that, I think, is a very basic fundamental condition of life. It has never changed, and it will not change anytime soon. I don't believe in any kind of future utopian world where everything will be perfect. Well, that is just not going to happen.
Yeah,
anytime. But if you think of history, if you make a comparison between our life and the life of our grandfathers and the life of their grandfathers before them, you realize that yes, of course, you do have a lot of problems, you do have a lot of things that make you unhappy now and then. But I believe you cannot refuse to acknowledge the fact that in very many practical respects, your life is much better than theirs. First, you have enough to eat every day. And that sounds like something very evident and very normal to us, but we know that for our ancestors, it will just not like that. We have food for nearly everyone in the Western world. Well, we still have some regions of the world to take care of. We have medicines, we have science, we have entertainment, we have Netflix, we still have the beautiful nature of the planet. We have been to the moon, and we'll go back to the moon sometime soon. And our life is not that bad compared to what it used to be for previous generations. And I see that as a constant trajectory of history so far, with a little change and little wiggles, but it has become better and better. I don't see any reason to think that it will stop. Well, it could stop. An asteroid could hit the Earth anytime. Yeah. After this pandemic, we could have another pandemic much worse. Bad things can always happen. Yeah. And there is always the risk of bad things happening. But based on our experience of history so far, I find it more sensible to believe that things will keep improving and getting better and better. Of course, with some roadblocks and some setbacks, but I do think that things will get better overall. Yes. And the process will continue for a very, very long time. Sooner or later, we will leave the Earth. We will establish the solar system-wide civilization. We will go to the stars. I do think that we will go to the stars. We will develop science that, from our perspective today, could only be called magic, as per Arthur C. Clarke's third law. We'll do all these things. We'll go live in the most remote regions of the universe. And yes, I think eventually we will resurrect the dead through tomorrow's magic-like science and technology. And we will realize all the things that religions have been promising people in ways that I think have made people happier overall.
Would you say that there's a few things I want to pick up on there? Just quickly on one of those points, would you say then that your belief in us achieving a godlike status and being able to, you know, resurrect and from the dead, is that a religious belief for you? How would you categorize? How are you categorizing that? Is that a scientific belief? Is that a philosophical? How are we categorizing that in terms of like the different types of belief systems for you, for yourself?
You know, to me, it's more like the kind of belief that you have before playing, saying a sport match, a tennis match, or even better, a football match, because that's a team sport, is the belief that your team will eventually win. But of course, you have to work on that. The thing is that your belief is that your team will, and you are going to do your damn best to ensure this outcome.
Yeah.
Winning is possible, and you're going to win. That's the kind of belief. Now, I do think scientifically that universal resurrection belongs to the realm of the physically possible.
Yeah. There
is nothing in the science that we understand today that tells us that universal resurrection will be impossible. On the contrary, there are, you know, many hints and many little things that we are beginning to see that make us think that eventually, one day in the far future, these things will be possible. Based on this, I have this action-oriented belief. It will happen because we will make it happen.
Yes.
And this perhaps is the strongest difference between this philosophical or metaphysical conviction and traditional religious belief. I think it's not going to happen because it's written in a book. It's not going to happen because of some supernatural agency. It is going to happen because we, you, I, and everyone else in the team, and the team is the whole planet of human beings. We will do our fucking best to make it happen, and happen it will. That's the best characterization of my belief.
Yeah, and that actually touches on one of the things I wanted to pick up from what you said earlier. Because when you were talking about earlier that you don't believe in kind of like a utopian sort of existence sometime in the future, that made me think about my own belief in, so I believe in the outer space, exploring outer space will bring about our salvation, to use a Christian or, you know, Abrahamic kind of term and concept. And I call that transcension, which has become kind of like a central dogma really within Astronism now. It's kind of like a central doctrine that we kind of hold to. And one of the things I do say when I'm speaking about it is that people, as part of this endeavor, as part of this going up to the stars, achieving new heights, whether that be physical, intellectual, metaphysical, it will cause death, it will cause distress, it will cause destruction, possibly. It will cause all types of kinds of bad things, you could say, because any type of endeavor that is multifaceted across years and hundreds centuries, you know, centuries of years, is inevitably going to cause that. So I just, what I think sometimes is interesting to speak about is the idea that space exploration, yeah, it's dangerous, and it is going to cause human suffering. A lot of the religions, particularly Buddhism and maybe Jainism to some degree, have kind of wanted to reduce suffering, haven't they? They've wanted to do things and to present a philosophy that will reduce suffering as much as possible, to get rid of suffering in the world. That's something I think that we as space philosophers, as people interested in space, need to kind of acknowledge, that what we are, the reality of what we're actually talking about is actually very dangerous, and that there will be lives lost, there will be human suffering, but it will all be worth it because of the promises that it has. And again, this touches on, again, this idea of, that I was thinking about, this idea of that the promises that space has, the promises that we're making when we're talking about you know, going to other planets and having like a civilization in solar system, in the galaxy and things like this. These are tinged, these involve promises, don't they? That whether they, you know, are serious or not, they do involve kind of promises to people. So I just wanted to know if you'd considered that. You probably have before, but what are your thoughts on this idea that what we're presenting as the future of humanity is going to cause suffering, you know, is going to cause death, is going to cause you know, human distress? Have you thought about that before, and what's your thoughts on that?
Oh, sure, but you know, let me stay on very working class like common sense for the time being. If you go out in the street, if you leave home and go out in the street, that is a risk. Something might happen. You might die in a car crash. You might die because someone shoots you in the street. But this is no reason to stay at home all the time and never go out.
Yeah.
And if you do, something would happen at home anyway, or at least you will die of starvation for lack of food. You have to go out and buy food, and that's it. There is no way out on this dilemma. Now, I do very much believe in the possibility of reducing suffering as much as possible, but I don't think the concept of entirely eliminating suffering makes sense. You know, to be alive is to be exposed to the risk of suffering. It has always been like that. And again, since it has always been like that, I don't see any reason to think that it could change soon. And of course, in the future, that we are promising people in space. There's going to be suffering and there's going to be death. For example, assume that you have watched The Expanse.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very good, is a surprisingly good science fiction show. I use The Expanse scenario to illustrate some features of an interplanetary civilization in my last book. You know, in The Expanse, there are things like rogue terrorist factions that send asteroids to hit the Earth and kill billions of people. And you see some scenes in the show, and you don't get more suffering than that.
Yeah,
that's you know, one thing that we will say that we will have to live with.
Yeah.
But you know, if you think of other features of the scenario, then you think that, well, okay, it's not going to be a utopia. It's not going to be a perfect world. People are still going to suffer.
Yeah.
And people are still going to die. But wow, it is a very interesting future. So I don't believe that we will ever entirely eliminate suffering, but I do think that things will get more and more interesting. And, you know, to me, that is an important thing. To live an interesting life. It doesn't have to be a risk-free life, but it has to be an interesting life. If I have to choose between living without risk and living without anything interesting ever happened to me, you know, I would choose risk.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other thing is that then I'm again making the same point that I was making a few minutes ago, that, you know, to do something is exposing yourself to a risk and the possibility that something will go wrong and you will have to suffer. But this does not mean that if you do nothing, you will be risk-free. If you do nothing, you will have many other risks, including the risk of boredom, which I think is a very bad one. And an analogy that I make a lot in my last book is with the COVID-19 lockdown situation, when I see that some between brackets intellectuals want to relinquish space exploration until we have solved all the problems on this planet. To me, that doesn't make much sense, and I see it equivalent to a very long lockdown in a retirement home, where, you know, everyone tries to be happy and avoid as many risks as possible. But, you know, we have seen what really happened to people locked in retirement homes, and we don't want that to happen to us. So I'm very much against all these ideas to abandon or relinquish or slow down space flight and technological progress in general. On the contrary, I think we should accelerate.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that this idea of these, and I've been thinking about this for a while actually, the promises of outer space exploration. There's a lot of different voices in this area, I think. Some of them more, these promises that I'm talking about, some of them are more religious in nature, more spiritual, some of them are more practical, more, you could say, financial, you know, for some billionaires who want to go out there and, you know, mine and things like this. So there's those types of promises, but then bringing it on to the main sort of topic that I wanted to cover today was this idea of becoming a godlike humanity becoming a godlike entity, a godlike species, and then, for example, achieving abilities to resurrect, or any other type of sort of higher abilities. That's a promise, isn't it? That's a promise that is being made by whoever is espousing that belief. So what I suppose the question I have is, what is the validity of that? If we can just try to explain for people who maybe haven't come across, that type of idea before, what is the validity that we could even do that, could even resurrect people, or maybe why would we want to do that? Because it might seem I've thought about this, it might seem what's the word? It might seem obvious that we will want to resurrect people, but is it that obvious? I think as an astronist, I think this is where my beliefs kind of diverge from cosmist, maybe in this regard. I don't really see that as being the ultimate goal, this idea of resurrection. I don't know what.
I think it is kind of obvious, because if you ask me, if I want to be resurrected sometimes in the future, as soon as it is physically possible, I would say yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just one person, so perhaps I have a very weird mentality. But no, I don't think so, because if you look at the history of the religions that promise some kind of resurrection, and those religions include Christianity and Judaism, of course, Islam, many tradition in Hinduism, and even many tradition in Buddhism, without mentioning all the several indigenous religions all over the world. These religions do promise resurrection, and they have won the faith of billions of people. And this simple historical fact seems to tell me that the idea of resurrection is something that people want. Now, without making it too cosmic and too eschatological, thing, so the far future of the universe is certainly going to be an interesting place, but perhaps that's not even the main reason why people would wish to be resurrected. The main reason is seeing again their loved ones who have departed. When you love someone and that person dies, in many cases, you are so paralyzed by grief that life doesn't seem worth living anymore. That's the case of many people. I say this is the case of the majority of people. This is certainly my own case. And if I didn't have this very deep conviction that death is not the end, honestly, I don't really see why I should continue to live. I think I would find a way to log off and just stop thinking about it. So yes, I think this is something that people want, and this is of course, this is the reason why we should do it. Okay. Because it's something that will make people happy. Even believing in this possibility is something that has the potential to make people happy. And to me, this is very important.
Yeah, and to some degree, I do acknowledge that. I do acknowledge that, for thousands of years, people have believed in resurrections and have desired to see their loved ones again. I think I do acknowledge that could be a promise. It could be a significant reason as well why to go into outer space and to explore the stars. I do agree with that. But I also think that, I mean, if we want to get to what is the ultimate, I agree with you that it is something that's important, but whether it's something that is ultimate, I don't agree with that. But I'm not saying you're saying that, but I'm just thinking in my own mind here. I think that my ultimate goal, the ultimate thing that I would like for humanity is to actually escape this cosmic reality, to escape this limited existence here, this limited existence even in the universe, because I believe that the cosmos is limited. I believe that there is a boundary to it, and that whatever exists beyond that is infinite, and that we are in this kind of bubble that is fundamentally it's began and it will end, and that we won't come back again. So I don't really believe in like reincarnation, for example, and that sort of cyclical understanding of time. I'm more kind of a linear kind of person in my thinking. So I think for me, the ultimate goal is to try to escape. It's what I call transcosmization, which is a long word, but it basically just is escaping the cosmic boundary. So the universe is expanding. I want to know what's beyond that universe. I want to know what's beyond that expansion. And hopefully one day, I want to see humanity get beyond that. Now, definitely resurrection could be, a means of doing that, maybe. I don't know, maybe.
No, I most certainly don't disagree with you on this point. Perhaps a difference in the terminology that we use is that when I say the universe, I mean all that exists.
Right. Okay.
Which I guess is much infinitely much more than what we can see at this moment with our senses and with more refined scientific instruments. I guess Shakespeare said it best. There are more things in heaven and earth. We don't know anything yet, and we don't really know what is out there. Yet maybe we are in a bubble universe in the sense of inflationary cosmology, or in some other sense. That's quite very much of a possibility. As a matter of fact, I mean, I think most cosmologists are persuaded that we do live in an inflationary multiverse, and our world is a very small bubble in a very big ocean. There are other concepts of multiverse, of course. One is the quantum multiverse. Another could be the multiverse of string theory, where our universe could be a four-dimensional brain embedded in a higher dimensional space. And I don't know what is out there, but I do think that there is much more than what we can currently see or even imagine. Whatever that is, I would call also that universe. The universe can be the multiverse of inflationary cosmology, or that of string theory, of the quantum one. I mean, all is part of the same reality that we are beginning to explore. and understand a little. So yes, I think one of the ultimate goals of our civilization, and let's not forget other civilizations in the universe, is to transcend whatever limits there might be in our conception of reality and expand. So basically is again the same concept of space expansion in a larger scale. Now we move beyond the Earth and go to beyond the planets. Then we'll go to the stars. Then maybe we'll find out that our universe is a pocket universe in a space with many more dimensions than four, and then we will find a way to go out there and find what it is and all that. It is basically all the same thing. Now, when it comes to the ultimate significance of our life and the things that we are doing, I believe this is the point that you want to make. Why are we here for? There is this very good book written by Stephen Wolf. I think you met him at one of the TerraSem events. Have you interviewed him?
I have, yes. Yeah, I hope to do again. Yeah.
Right. And so this is a very small book, but is very clear in answering your questions. The idea is that, what we're doing, we want to expand, we want to outward. This is something that we do because we are encouraged by very powerful forces and principles that are implicit in how reality works. The evolution from matter to life, the evolution from life to mind, the evolution from simple minds to complex minds and to inconceivably complex minds is something that is happening on this planet, and it must have happened on countless other planets. It's happening because it is foreseen by the very laws of fundamental nature that we are beginning to understand. These are laws that favor life over matter, favor more complexity over less complexity, and all that. And we are basically doing what we can, what we must, to help the universe become alive.
Yes.
And thinking in a way. Or if you want to use a religious terminology, we are doing the little things that we are doing to help not only to become godlike ourselves, but to help the universe to become godlike in an even higher sense.
Yes.
And here again of space enthusiasts who are saying the same thing. I could mention Frank White. That is the overview effect, and his other book, the Cosma hypothesis, is talking of exactly that. We are thinking instruments of the universe in its quest to become alive, super conscious, and godlike. Now, this seems to require at least having as much information over reality as possible, including as much information as possible on whatever happened in the past. And I think you and I and everyone are also part of the information that the universe needs to know and remember. That's why the idea of universal resurrection goes hand in hand with this eschatological ideas that we are discussing, because it is a way to maximize the information available to whatever the universe will become.
In a way, I mean, there's so much I want to pick up on there. I probably won't remember it all, but just to pick up on that last thing you said. So is it ultimately then, is the ultimate goal really to cheat death then? Is that really what is that really the ultimate goal, that this kind of unstoppable force, is that death, that unstoppable force, one of the unstoppable forces that we are faced with, one of the things that religion has tried to get around and overcome? Is the same kind of vein of idea? Would that be fair to say?
It's a similar idea where if something is unstoppable, then you cannot do anything to stop it by definition. But that would seem to apply to the death of a person, to the heat death of the universe as well, to the death of a civilization, all that. But I don't think that it is unstoppable in this sense, that there is nothing that can be done. It's very difficult to stop, of course it is. Okay. But I believe our descendants will be able to deal with that. And if they don't, for example, because the Earth is hit by an asteroid next week, then there are countless of billions of other civilizations in the universe that have tried to do the same. And, a big number, some of them are bound to succeed. Mm-hmm. And it all comes down to the concept of memory, I think. Memory is fundamental to cognition. It is fundamental to intelligence. And all the memories of the past, all the information that has existed in the past, the possibility to remember that information, I think, is fundamental to whatever the universe will become. And here again, I think the universe wants us or someone else to achieve universal resurrection, because that is a way to maximize the available information at some future time.
And I want to go back to just something you said earlier, which is something I've thought about for quite a long time, which is this idea of kind of like the carrot and the stick idea, where humanity and also the idea of escaping as well, escaping this reality, the terrestrial reality of the Earth, by going into the solar system, escaping the realities of the solar system by going into the galaxy, moving out into the galaxy, and this kind of like opening out of like boxes, getting out, you're sort of in a box, jumping into another box,
right,
jumping into another one. So could you say that the promises that I'm making, or that you're making, or that any other philosopher of space is making about space, are these false promises? If if it's sort of like, well, we'll get to the cosmic resurrection once we've got to such and such a galaxy, or I think some skeptical people maybe in the future may think, well, how far do we have to go? How far do we have to escape ourselves, from Earth? How far do we have to go to get to this, what I call it transcension, other people might call it something else. I've kind of thinking about that as well. And I don't want to be a person I don't want to be known as someone who's giving false promises. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, the endeavor that is in front of us is a multifaceted, multi-layered endeavor that does look like a carrot and the stick idea, where humanity gets to the edge of the solar system, then we say, well, you need to go to the edge of the galaxy now. So what is the, it kind of looks bad on people like us, from people who are skeptical about space, doesn't it? Do you not think? Or
well, I have two different answers that come to my mind. Let's start with the first one. Yes, we escaped from a box to find ourselves in another box. Then we escape from this other box to find ourselves in yet another box, and so on. You know, of course, there could be a limited number of boxes, of course, but I don't think so. What I do think is that the sequence of boxes from which you escape just to find yourself in a bigger box, that could go on forever, and there is nothing wrong with that. You know, there is this British philosopher who was writing at the beginning of the 20th century called Samuel Alexander. He wrote a book called Space, Time and Dating, who had this concept of you know, beings within beings, within more complex beings, and within more complex beings without end.
Yeah. He
built a whole cosmology based on that. Well, I think something like that is very much how the universe works. We will expand, and we'll find something more. Then we will expand beyond that and find something more. Now, some specific thing that you can imagine and describe, like resurrection, doesn't have necessarily to happen only at the end of this infinite progression. It can happen much before, and then it can re-happen again in a more in an expanded version, and then in an expanded version, and so on. So that, you know, if this sketch of a cosmology makes any sense, then sometime in the far future, you could be resurrected to become something more, a new, bigger you. But then again, that new, bigger you could have his own death-like end, and then yet again could be resurrected again as a bigger, bigger you, and so on without end. Now, there is this book by Eric Steinhardt called Your Computational Afterlives, which has exactly this concept of multiple resurrection in bigger and bigger and bigger scales. And then again, yes, it is, I don't know enough to say that this is what will happen, but I think this is something like some description, necessarily very imprecise, that we can give now of what will actually happen. Did that make any sense?
Yeah, it did.
I'm just thinking a lot.
No, yeah, and that's great, and that I love doing that, because these ideas need to be addressed and explored. So yeah, I've just thought of another one as well, because so
that hold on one moment, because you know where I was still getting to the second answer that came to my mind, which is when you say, well, okay, when this thing is going to happen, we go to the edge of the solar system, and then what? We fill all the galaxy, and then what? When will this universal resurrection happen? Well, I do think that some initial elementary form of resurrection could happen very soon as we master some of the required technologies. For example, there has been this TerraSem event actually a few days ago. Too bad that you couldn't come, but the video is online to watch. That was about all the things that are being done in the neuroscience labs to move toward the possibility of mind uploading, transferring your entire self to a computational substrate which is different from a biological brain, and perhaps much more robust and much more able to withstand extreme conditions. Now, I do think the simplest form of technological resurrection is a combination of the idea of mind uploading and the idea of time scanning, where by time scanning, I mean acquiring information from the past in high definition, which is essentially what archaeologists do. And that's why these things are often referred to as quantum archaeology. But of course, I'm talking of really high definition information. There is a very good science fictional example, which is the novel The Light of Other Days by Arthur C. Clarke and Stephen Baxter. Or there are all these ideas now that quantum entangled systems are really connected by a wormhole-like structure, able to access information from other regions of space and time, and basically that every pixel of space-time is connected to every other pixel of space-time through channels that future technology will be able to access. And so if you put together the possibility to acquire very detailed information from my own brain right here and now, and the possibility to upload this information to a new brain, which could be a robotic brain running on a quantum computer or whatever you like. And now, lo and behold, you do have technological resurrection. And this simple form of technological resurrection could be achieved on a cosmic scale relatively soon. What does that mean? Not next week or next year, but perhaps in a few thousands of years, we will be able to do that. So we will find ourselves alive again in a very interesting universe, which will not be a utopia, because we will have our own problems and we will have our own reasons for unhappiness. And those will be reasons that perhaps we could not even imagine now. And perhaps we will have our own equivalent of death. But then again, there will be very other, much more sophisticated forms of technological resurrection, able to do something against that, and then again and again, in a process without end. That again is a very poetical description, not very precise, but I think not entirely unrelated to how things work in reality.
Yes, and I think it's quite interesting to think. I just thought we could be doing this, we could be having the same conversations in a million years' time if we're both resurrected and trying to solve the problems then in a million years. I just
a different version of this conversation. We would not be able to even understand what our future counterparts are saying or thinking. But yes, a very different version of essentially the same conversation. But people did already have different versions of this conversation thousands of years ago. They wouldn't be able to understand what we are saying, but they were discussing essentially the same things in their own language.
Yeah, and that's what fascinates me about this subject when we're talking about that, because that progression as well, I think is fantastic. But I think just to take things even more kind of philosophical, my belief is that outer space and exploring the stars, becoming one with the stars, will get us closer, in whatever that means, closer to who we are. Which is a very philosophical, maybe people wouldn't like that kind of phrase, you know, get us closer to who we are. Because that's what I was thinking about when we were saying moving from box to box. Well, maybe when we're jumping out of the boxes and going to the next one, we are getting closer to, albeit this may be very slow process, but we will get closer to understanding why we're here. I think also, I do think there is value in the concept of making your own purpose. Maybe there's no inherent purpose that we have as a species, but maybe because of our own sapience and intelligence, we have the capacity to provide ourselves with our own purpose. So I think that's, again, what we're all in this community trying to suggest, is that outer space exploration and expansion is that purpose. Whether that has been, I think, to add another layer onto that is to say, well, God has, or some kind of destiny concept says that, well, we are destined to go to the stars. And sometimes I like that idea, you know, it's a great idea. I think it's got a lot of power behind it. And even the idea that God wants us to go to the stars, to come closer to God, to get, you know, to go up to the stars, to physically, but also intellectually become closer to whatever is the ultimate reality. I think those, again, are very powerful things. But what do you think that what is your belief in terms of those three? So we have no purpose inherently, but we're making our own purpose. Maybe believing some kind of destiny, some like predestined, you know, we are predestined to go there. Or are you more kind of in the more theological realm of God wants us to explore space, and has provided us with the intelligence, the evolution that we've come to, the skills, the ideas to get us there? Where do you sit in those three? Or maybe you're in another school that I've not thought about.
I'm sort of horizontally in all these schools.
All of them.
Because giving a precise answer to that, I think, means adopting a particular definition of who is answering the question.
Yeah.
So if I think of myself as just a physical system, a biological physical system who is alive, then going back to what we were discussing, I think that my purpose, mandated by the way nature works, is to expand life and consciousness as far as possible, because I think this is our ultimate destiny. Mm-hmm. This is what we are here for.
Yeah.
If I think of myself like me, I mean, I have many other purposes, of course, like eating the wonderful dinner that I think my wife is preparing for me. That's why, unfortunately, I have to leave in about 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But this is most certainly a purpose. I have many practical purposes in my life, and so does everyone. Yeah. And in some sense, yes, we do make our own purpose and our own meaning. But if I now forget about the practical reality and of my condition and life and go back to the more philosophical considerations, then I would restart with some philosophical statements about the purpose of the universe and so on. All these things are all in my mind at the same time, and I think they are all in yours. You are also thinking about what you're going to eat for dinner tonight, besides cosmology and eschatology. So that it's perfectly fine. You don't have one doesn't have to have only one purpose in life. There is some aspect of you has some purposes and another one has others. And the good thing is doing something to get closer to all these things.
Yeah, and I think just as a final kind of point before you have to go, I think that ties in really with kind of the purpose of why I do what I do, why you are doing what you're doing, and why the cosmists, Russian cosmists from 100 or so years ago did what they did. And even people from thousands of years ago, the philosophers of Greece and such, is that I think all of us who are part of this kind of space philosophy community, we all have this kind of fundamental draw to the astronomical world, to outer space, and we all have this kind of fundamental principle, really, that space, number one, is important, and number two, is filled with opportunity and is filled with the things that we can use, that we can discover to reach our potential as a species, whether we believe in God or not, whether we believe in destiny or not. We do have a reality here. We do have a limited lifespan, each of us. Of course, that changes when we have resurrection. But if we think about our reality now, we do have these opportunities, don't we, to expand and help people to understand the possibilities in space. And I suppose that's one of my main purposes for what I do. I presume you're something along the similar lines.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very, very much so. It is, making people see things that perhaps they might not see. The thing is that both you and I had a relatively privileged life. We were able to go to school because we had a family able to afford that. We were able to spend a long, many hours reading books.
Yeah.
And other people, the majority of other people, a lot of other people, really don't have that luxury. They have to contend with very practical and very unpleasant problems all the time. So they do not have all the time to give to intellectual reflections like we have. And, I think our duty to the majority of people, is to make new ideas available to them in a way that are easy to understand. And then again, we can go back to religion here, because what is religion? If you read the Christian theology, you find that there are a lot of incredibly sophisticated intellectual arguments and splitting a hair in four and all that, but those were not directly given to the public, but distilled in a very few, in a very simple pills of wisdom that they could offer people to make them believe, for example, in afterlife and in the importance of being good to your neighbors. These things, I think this has had a positive impact in history. Nowadays is very politically correct to emphasize the negative aspects of religion. And of course, I'm aware of that, but I do prefer to emphasize the positive aspects myself. Religion has given a lot of happiness to a lot of people, and that's something good. And I hope that my ideas, which are very abstract, eschatological, imprecise, all that you want, but I hope that my ideas can give happiness to people, and I'm willing to do my best to present my ideas in a simple way that is also conducive to personal happiness on the one hand, and on the other hand, to working in reality to transform all these ideas into reality. And that's, for example, what we are doing with space exploration and scientific development.
Yeah. Well, that's a great way to end our conversation. I really like that, and it's given me food for thought, definitely, and to keep going with what I'm doing. And sometimes I think people can you can get distracted, and sort of your motivation can kind of wane, and sometimes, but you have to kind of come back and realize and remember really that what you are doing is helping the situation, and it is making a difference. So it's a great way to end it. So I thank you for I'll let you go and have your dinner now, but I thank you for joining me again, and Giulio, and I hope that in the future we can have more great conversations like this.
Thank you very much for having me, and here is hoping to do the same.
Brilliant. Thanks, and thanks everyone for listening as well, and I'll see you in the next episode of A Conversation with Cometan. Bye everybody.